I'm just going to quickly introduce the evening tonight. My name is Alex Ago. I'm the Director of Programming at the School of Cinematic Arts. And I'm very excited to host another event together with LA Skins Fest alongside Visions and Voices and the School of Cinematic Arts Our Voice series. Tonight we have an amazing panel featuring the cast and crew of the new Peacock series Rutherford Falls, which debuts on Peacock beginning April 22nd. Tonight's conversation is going to be moderated by MFA candidate Kapena Baptista from our Peter Stark producing program. Just before we get started, I wanted to welcome up my colleague Stacy Patterson to offer a land acknowledgement, and we'll take it from there. So Stacy, please, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Again, as Alex just introduced, my name is Stacy Patterson. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the proud daughter of an enrolled member of the Ojibwe Nation of White Earth, Minnesota. And I also here at USC serve as a program manager for the Division of Media Arts and Practice. I joined the organizers of tonight's event, all of these amazing panelists, LA Skins Fest, Visions and Voices, to welcome you and ask that you join me to acknowledge the land on which we work, we teach, study, create, and build community. For those of us in the LA Basin, this is Tongva land. For those of you who may be connecting with us from elsewhere, I encourage you to visit nativeland.ca, a website that affords the opportunity for you to discover the original people, if you are not one of them yourself, on whose land you now reside. Beginning some 3,500 years ago, the Tongva moved into coastal Southern California, inhabiting what is now Los Angeles and well beyond. They thrived near their 4 sacred mountains and 4 sacred rivers, including what was then the wild and free LA River. The Spanish, who began to settle and colonize this area in the 1600s, brought conflict and violence and disease, and ultimately forced relocation, a policy the US government would take up as well and perpetuate long after, profoundly altering the lives of Indigenous people. But this is not the complete story. It is certainly not the end of the story for this community and for so many others. Tongva, like many Native peoples everywhere, continue in the present. Theirs is a story of hope and resilience, the transfer of knowledge that continues across generations in Native communities today. And like any of us, modern Native people love stories of all genres and across all mediums. So honoring those who came before us does indeed acknowledge our history, theirs and ours, but we also honor the land that they stewarded with care and in turn are called upon to expand our understanding of all Indigenous peoples, to learn and know that they continue to strive for self-determination, demand respect for tribal sovereignty, and the honoring of longstanding treaties. And because of all of this and so many more, I hope that you will continue to attend Native programming like tonight's whenever and wherever it is afforded. And as we gather, as we think about, as we enjoy tonight's conversation, I ask that whether you are Native or not, that all of us, through the stories that we develop, the research we conduct, the courses we teach, what we imagine and create, that we envision a present and a future that is perhaps less colonized and a bit more indigenized. So I thank you for your time and for allowing me to be here. And please, everyone, continue to take good care of yourselves and each other.
Thank you so much, Stacy. That was wonderful. I just want to quickly say before we move on that if anyone wants to ask a question tonight, the best way to do that is to actually write it in the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your Zoom panel. We're going to have a moderated conversation and then open it to audience questions, at which point we'll try and bring on your questions. We may invite some of you over to join us on camera, depending on how much time we have. So just please place your questions in the Q&A box. And I'd like to welcome up Ian Scoridon from the LA Skins Fest. He's been absolutely amazing in putting together and in some cases hosting these panels with us over the past year. I can't wait to keep working with him and Patricia Gomez in the future. on more collaborations between the School of Cinematic Arts and LA Skins Fest. So Yin, over to you.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Stacy. That was beautiful. And I want to thank the panelists, the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts, as well as USC's Visions and Voices program. I also want to thank Peacock and Comcast NBC Universal. NBC Universal has been an incredible supporter for many years as we launched the 6th annual Native American TV Writers Lab today. So congrats to our fellows there. Our first day actually is this panel, so they can learn from the best, right guys? Okay. We also opened our call for films from the 15th annual LA Skins Fest taking place in November. It's our call for films, and we'll be launching a new 7-day writers intensive in partnership with the Cherokee Nation Film Office. Finally, we have distributed over $500,000 in grants to our COVID relief fund for Native people in above the line and below the line positions. This is in partnership with Netflix, and they recently extended the program, so please apply at nama.media. Please remember, you don't have to be unemployed, facing foreclosure, or destitute to qualify for this program, so please check it out. So thank you again to the panelists for being here, and thank you to the audience for joining us. Kapena, please.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Kapena. I'm just so excited to be here right now in the Zoom room, sitting with all of these fantastic, amazing people just doing the damn thing. And we're gonna learn all about it really quick. So if we could just kind of go around, I'll call out your names. Why don't you just tell me who you are, where you're from, what your role is, and if you could describe Rutherford Falls in one word, what would it be? Give you a minute to do that. I saw the look on your face, Bobby. Why don't we start with you?
Why are you picking on me? What did I ever do to you? How there, little Medaka Yuppies? I'm Bobby Wilson, Nimachi Apiado from Minnesota up there, as the white folks like to say. I'm Sisiktawan, Wakbetawan, Dakota. I'm not going to say the Ojibwe thing. I'm just not going to do it. All my friends know what I'm talking about. That's it. That's okay. We'll breeze by it. We're here for unity, okay?
Right.
Doesn't matter what the Ojibways did to my people, specifically the Dakota people in Minnesota.
This is the standard length of a Bobby Wilson introduction, by the way. We're like about 1/10 of the way in.
No.
Strong, starting off strong.
We're not even 1/10 the way in, okay? We're just getting started. This is the tip of the iceberg.
If you need to get water or snacks,
Now
now's your chance.
Now would be
Every introduction is a declaration of war.
You go to the bathroom. Good
Let me
time.
know if you're in the bathroom too. Like turn up your speakers when you go so that you can still hear me from the bathroom. That would be ideal. I'm a writer on Rutherford Falls. I'm also an actor who does not speak as much as I'm speaking now in the show. So I'm just taking my opportunity to get it all out.
The truth comes out.
I'll hit you too, whoa.
Your one word. You missed out on the assignment.
Oh, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Oh. Right. Here we go. Let's do it. All right, let's move on over to Sierra.
Hi, yeah, my name is Sierra Teller Ornelas, Yate, Sierra Ornelas Yanshe, Tabahendishle, Nakaidina Bashashi, Tuhaglin Dishache, Do, Nakaidina Dishanelli. Bobby knows what I'm talking about. My name is Sierra. I'm a member of the Navajo Nation, Edgewater, born for the Mexican people. I'm also one of the EPs, one of the co-creators, and the showrunner of Rutherford Falls.
And your one word?
Funny. I took it first. Good luck, everyone else.
Great. All right, moving on to Ty.
Hi, my name is Ty. I am a writer and actor on the show as well, very much. Tied with Bobby, I think. That's right. Yeah. No. I need a word, right?
You need a word.
Hilarious.
Here we go.
There we go. I don't mind that.
Here we go. All right. Fantastic. Moving on to Michael. Oh.
You're muted.
Uncle, you're muted.
Uncle, you're on mute, Uncle.
Oh my God. Thank you. Hi. Michael Greyeyes. I'm Nehiao from Treaty 6 territory up in Canada. My dad is from Muskeg Lake. My mom is from Sweetgrass First Nation. Right now, I'm speaking to you from Toronto, aka Dish with One Spoon territory, for all of you history buffs out there. And I play Terry Thomas on the show. My one word is family.
Love that. Love that so much. Thank you, Michael. All right, moving on to Tazba.
Manahu, everybody. My name is Tazba, and I am a citizen of the Bishop Paiute tribe, and I'm also Navajo and San Carlos Apache. And I was a story editor on Rutherford Falls, and trivia was not an actor in the show, but if you can find me somewhere, I won't have a prize for you. And my one word to describe the show is Jana.
Yeah.
Here we go. All right, great segue. Jana, let us have it.
Hi, my name is Jana Schmieding. I'm Minneconjou and Sichangu Lakota. I'm an enrolled Cheyenne River Lakota Sioux tribe, and I play Reagan Wells on Rutherford Falls. And I guess my one word is classy.
Ooh. Maybe alluding to something there. I'm excited. I can't wait to see this. I had the very great honor of having viewed a little bit of it already, and I'm so sad that it was only 4 episodes and I just wanted to watch so much more. My abs hurt. What little abs I have, like they were just like in pain, and I was like, wow, how is this possible? Like, you know, I haven't seen anything like this before, and it was just so amazing to me just to see like modern natives on screen portrayed in this way, and it just breaks breaks down so many barriers, and it just really inspired me. So I guess this question is mostly for Sierra. Where did the inspiration for this show come from?
Well, Mike Schur and Ed Helms, who are the other 2 co-creators, they had worked together on The Office for many years, and Mike had really kind of crafted the Andy Bernard kind of character. And so they'd remained really good friends and kind of decided to start working together. Separately, I had worked with both of them. I had worked on Brooklyn Nine-Nine with Mike, and I developed this pilot that was like a Cholo Simpsons with Ed, an animated thing that never happened, but I still loved. And so I had stopped working on a show called Superstore. It was like kind of network grind of making 22 episodes a year, and wanted to do like a native anthology series. That was sort of like the thing I was sort of kind of figuring out. And then I got this call saying, oh, you know, Mike and Ed have this idea for a show. They have like kind of half an idea. They want to come talk to you. And so I was like, oh, they're great dudes. I'll talk with them. And usually, like, I'm sure everyone here knows, like, we often get calls as like native media makers from people being like, oh, I'm making a show or something about native people and it's done, but like, can you watch it or read the script? We're going to shoot it in the next hour and just tell me it's fine and I'm a good person. You're like, oh, God. So very rarely do you get a call where they're like, we have half an idea. Do you want to come and develop it with us for a year before we go out and pitch it? And so when I heard about the character of Nathan and sort of this small town, and there was like a couple of things that they had kind of figured out. And I was like, oh, I grew up, my mom's a master Navajo tapestry weaver. I come from sort of museums and art markets and stuff. And so I was like, oh, you should have a character like this. You should have a character like this, like instead of 1 native character, what if there were 10 native characters, you know? And really started pitching, and it was just a really great organic kind of meeting. We were like in this Mike Schur's office. He has like these big couches and you just sit there and like, you know, 1 hour turned to 2 hours, turned into like weeks of just talking and kind of fleshing out these characters and creating them. And so then after like a year, we went and pitched it, sold it to Apple initially. They ended up not picking it up. And by the time we had finished this whole process, Peacock was a network, like it hadn't existed when we initially went out. And so gave the script to them. They loved it. And they were like, let's make this TV show. And so we were sort of off to the races.
Wow. So could you talk about a little bit, like what were some of the challenges involved in the development process for this?
I mean, I'm trying to think. Really, you know, Mike Schur has made a bunch of TV shows, and Ed Helms is a big old movie star. So I feel like very privileged in terms of a lot of the like normal things that happen. I remember like we went, you know, pitch, and we got to go to like the big boardrooms that I'd never been to. I was like, I didn't even know this was a place, so I in terms of challenges, I think, it's always hard to make a television show. You want to make something funny, you want to make something interesting, but I feel like COVID was probably the biggest hurdle that we had in terms of like, which is like something so many people dealt with, not just in, this industry. So, but really, I mean, it was just an embarrassment of riches in terms of everyone we kept adding on to the project, all of the writers here, Michael, the show just kind of got better and better the more people we added to the group.
So when you were initially pitching it around, I mean, what was the general reception in the pitch room? Were people generally receptive to having a lot of native characters, or were people a little bit kind of sus about it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think like Ed Helms is like a giant movie star, so it's great. Like, there's a safety in being like, we got this guy, so like, don't worry about all these other things. And then, so like when you're in the room, you want to kind of, but no, I mean, people were really open to, I think the industry has changed, at least in terms of selling stuff. When it comes to picking things up and getting things made, I think that's a much different conversation. But I think people are down to try things a little bit more. And there's just so many networks now, and they don't want the idea that they're going to miss out on something. And so, I mean, like, there are so many native, like, we're not the only native show coming out, you know what I mean? And I think like a really exciting time, just a monumental across the board for native people. And I think that, I remember when Transparent and Pose came out, I remember like Googling like how many trans people are in the United States, how many native people, because it was like, oh, you can't, it's not the old way of like, is there a market big enough to service making the show? Now it's like people just want new stories and they want new ideas.
Right. Great. Wow. That's, I mean, yeah. But
I mean, it's not easy. It's still like statistically things aren't great, but I mean, I feel like we are like making strides.
But there's so much momentum now, right? There's Sovereign with Bird and Ava, right?
Dogs,
Dogs, right? It's like it is a really exciting time. Like
it really is. Like I remember having lunch with Sterling at Cantor's, and like both of our shows hadn't gone. We were going to pitch them, and I was like, if my show goes, I'll hire you. And he's like, if my show goes, I'll hire you. And then both of our shows went, and we couldn't hire each other. We were like scrambling, but not really. But like, no, it was one of those things where it was like, it's such a good time. It's hard to really wrap my head around it, to be completely honest.
Great. So opening up a little bit more to everybody here. So with so little examples of everyday Native folks on TV, what were y'all's goals in terms of creating that new image for people who aren't necessarily familiar with us, or don't know a Native person, or don't think they know a Native person? What were y'all really trying to accomplish in your various roles?
Bobby.
I was just happy to be here.
Let's take up the rest of the time in the panel.
Yeah. Now Bobby. Now you.
I was like, if you guys aren't gonna say anything, I'll fill the space up. I got stuff to say. Microphone here.
Let's have it.
Audience. No, I've been touring as a live comedian with my comedy troupe, the 1491s, for a better part of a decade, and through that work, I had always just really wanted to see, I guess, my people and people that look like me in the driver's seat of how we can shape Indigenous media, and kind of exploring what that means through comedy. I think it's one of the more powerful mediums within media. To get people to sort of break down their walls and really kind of examine the world that's around us, the world that we all live in and participate in. And the opportunity to do it with like a group of other natives was like, I mean, that's the dream, right?
Right.
I think for me, I was going to cut you off so we could, keep it going. Just kidding. I am obsessed with Bobby. I love him. He's the funniest person ever, and I love his long stories. And lots of ideas come from those long stories.
They really do.
It reminds me of a story.
It's like fly fishing. You got to like really go.
But it's good. The fish that come out are really good. I would say that one of the things that I felt like we were trying to accomplish is to show our humor, because there's so many, like, I don't think that people have seen us be funny yet.
Right.
And I think Native people, we know that we're hilarious. Like, my Native family and friends are funnier than anyone on earth. But like the way that we've been represented is very, sad and tragic and like
Right.
drama and like weird. And so I was just excited to show our humor, but also I was excited to just show like, how do Native people interact with each other? Because we also don't get to see that, right? There's like
Right.
usually one Native character. And
Right.
when I think back to my first meeting with Sierra, where I was just so stoked to meet a Native showrunner, period, let alone a woman, let alone someone of the same tribe. And we were in this meeting together, and it was her and Ed Helms in there. And me and Sarah were just like talking. It was so natural. And we were like cracking up, and we just got to skip Indian 101. And at one point, I remember Sarah looking over at, she was like, do you have any questions? He's like, no. He's like, this is amazing. Just to see us interacting. And when I realized in that moment, I was like, wow, like a lot of people haven't seen Native people interact together. And so I think that, I hope that's what comes across in the show, is that you get to see our humor authentically. I definitely think we push the boundaries a little bit. Because, our humor is kind of dark sometimes. But yeah, that's what I would say.
I'm very much in the same camp as Tazbah. Just having natives simply exist and just be people, was unfortunately revolutionary in itself. And we are funny, and we are funny, weird, strange people. And the best part of like what I enjoyed being in the room the most was just our completely diverse opinions and views on literally everything, which is the reality of the Native world. And also, everyone was great. Everyone was such a treat. I'm really grateful for those 10 weeks we had together pre-COVID.
Wow. So, Jana or Michael, do you have anything to add to that from the actor perspective, in terms of like, you are the people on screen kind of bringing what these people writing, well, I guess Jana, you're also writing on it too. So it's like, what does that mean to you to also kind of act this out? What are you thinking of when you're kind of in that process?
Well, for me, it was a really, at least as a creative, it was a really awesome opportunity for me to kind of see all of the sides of production. It was a very cool learning experience. My first time being staffed on a show, and it was very not surreal, but like hyper real to be on, in scenes with other Native people, to like be existing and like, but also I'm a comedy person as well. I've been doing live comedy for over 10 years in New York City and here in Los Angeles. And I know the feeling of doing comedy, but doing it on screen with other Native people was like, it just felt, it was such a wonderful opportunity to learn with the people that I got to learn with. And also it just felt like I was really in my element in a way that I don't think I've ever experienced.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I've been really fortunate in the work I've done, that I've connected with communities, people from all over Turtle Island, and I'm part of some really fantastic Indigenous-led projects. So I understand the experience of what it means to be at the center of the narrative. That there's a sovereignty over our image, over what we say. So I've really been blessed in that way. But Rutherford Falls was other level in terms of that kind of community. Usually, as Tazbah said, like, so many times I was like the only Native character on a show,
right?
Or on a whole set, right?
Right.
But I was not alone on Rutherford Falls. Like, no matter where I turned, I would find community, and I'd find support. So that really was like the thing I remember the most is, if I had to turn somewhere, Sierra was there, or Jana was there, or somebody, somebody, and also the script. I always could trust the script because I knew the scripts were coming from us. So that's really a profound shift in my experience in Hollywood.
That's a really good point to make, right? Like you could trust what's coming out of the writers' room in a way, right? So I guess a question for all the writers here: what's it been like working with each other and having more than one native opinion on something? Have there been any kind of like controversial subjects? Or I'll get into another question, but let's start with that first.
No, for sure. Like what I really liked, I think sometimes when, like, as I've been in multiple writers' rooms and someone will have a question about a Native issue and I'll do my best to answer it. But I'm like, but I don't know everything. And I also am not, it's not a monolith. We're not a monolith even within communities. So I'm like, so don't, but you kind of know they're going to go tell all their friends and they'll say like, this is what the real thing is. And you're like, And so with certain conversations like about capitalism or about casinos, like we all kind of came at it from different perspectives. And it was really interesting to not only have those conversations, but to see how it resonated with the whole staff, like how do we build these stories, and then to have multiple Native characters on the show that could represent these like different points of view. So it was also like, it wasn't just like conversation for conversation's sake. It like created a tone for the room. And then it also helped, I think, to know that those conversations wouldn't just be like, go off into the ether, that you could have like an actual debate on screen about something.
Right. What's the experience been like for y'all writing white characters in a way, right? I mean, talk about a reversal of the script, right? Where we're so used to being written about. It's like now y'all on the other side of the table. How have y'all taken advantage of that opportunity?
That's so funny.
I have a white friend, so it's fine.
I actually have some white, like in my ancestry.
Yeah.
Like way back. So I mean, I didn't really grow up like with it, but I've been connecting with it since this show. So
powerful.
Yeah, I'm also 1/16 white, so, and representation matters.
Sorry, I need to catch my breath.
That's how you write for white characters. You just find your colonizer and your lineage, and you just
tell your manager, and then
go from there. Happened.
Right.
My reps are aware of my new lineage.
I've been getting a lot of interviews. It's really strange.
Keep coming. So I mean, well, what's the impact been, I guess, like working with you all, like so many Native writers in the room, with the non-Native writers in the room? Like how do you think like their perspective has been changed, and I guess where they go from here?
We had a very diverse non-Native room. So I really feel like in many ways, our perspective on whiteness was very clear. And, it's great to work with an extremely diverse room. And because you get a lot of these different nuances, these perspectives on political, the political themes and the interpersonal themes, and also the identity themes, we're pulling from like a really, just a wealth of experiences and resources in that respect. And we also really got along. We really liked each other in the room, and we're truly diverse in so many ways. So it was just a pleasure to come to work and to kind of crack these stories with everyone. So it was, I think diversity beyond Native, non-Native is like one aspect, like one degree of how we were functioning, but beyond that, where there's just a truly a very diverse room, I think can add so much to a story.
The truth is, we adopted all of them. Like we're all like we had now. But I do think that every person in there, I could say, probably left that room knowing something more about us or having their own perspective widen. Like even if they came in knowing something and being like aware, I think being around us and, you know, being around more than one Native person, like,
Mhm.
like a lot of times you're kind of trying to be the voice of, you know, everybody, but they got to see different perspectives. So I think people probably walked away understanding we're not a monolith, that we're very diverse, that we're really funny. And they're all excited that they got adopted.
We did have a chant when any of the non-natives made a joke that was for the native audience. We would chant, "One of us." One of
Yeah, and then they would look at us for approval, like, was that a good one?
Be like,
yeah.
very, yeah.
My goodness. So from what I understand, like the subjects on the show are pretty timely, right? Maybe a little sensitive for some folks, but the show's a comedy, right? So like how do you all feel that comedy is like the best vehicle to kind of touch on these subjects as opposed to like a drama or even like a documentary of sorts?
I think there's a lot of like assumption in comedy. Your brain has to kind of make those connections, and that's what makes us laugh, not to get all scientific about comedy. But I think you have to do a little work to get it in a way that I think drama a lot of time is very much like explained, or it's an emotional core of a character. Whereas I think, you know, situational comedy, I think lends itself a lot to various like actual situations that are difficult to talk about. I also think too that like in our room, it very much was like from the top down, like no punching down. So that's like a concept in comedy of like, we never punched down. We made sure that Native people were always in on the joke. That was like a very kind of lighthouse touchstones that we always made sure we adhered to. There were certain feelings of that. So I've worked on shows where, you know, you talk about timely issues and sometimes you feel like, are we actually saying something about this? Or are we just doing it because it's like sense memory, you know? And I think we tried really hard to include those issues because that is a part of our daily lives, but it was never like, here's where we tackle this. Like it's never homework, and it's never done in a way that I feel like is punching down.
Anyone else? All right.
I'll say something that I have realized kind of over the course of also being on the show is that the show is not really about political things. It's about people, it's about characters. And when you can focus your writing and your the story around individuals and actual characters, then you're working with so much more material, because people aren't just on this earth to combat one issue. I mean, we are, but most people. But really, like, you know, each of these characters can go on to have more struggles politically and more issues in their lives, and you're just able to, when you focus on the humanity of the characters, then you're not kind of trapped just always tackling an issue.
That was sort of our thing for sure, was that like Terry Thomas, Michael's character, says, you know, there's a scene where he says, nobody likes a complicated story. It's why everyone hated Cloud Atlas. And it's like one of my favorite jokes on the show, but it's also, I think, a little bit of like the theme of our show very much is that all of this stuff is so messy and it's so complicated. And so none of the characters, in the same way we didn't want to flatten any of the Native characters, which you always see happen to us, we didn't really want to flatten anybody. I feel like on any given Sunday, a character on our show is someone's ally and someone's adversary, that you kind of have to hold two things about them in your hands at the same time. And I just think the times that we're living in right now, that is very difficult to do. And so to me, it was more just like, how do we like make something really funny that also kind of introduces just like, hey guys, this is messy and this stuff is complicated, because I think people want like a very simple story, and that, especially with Native people, that is rarely the case, because we have so much history and so many complexities that you know, we rarely get to really talk about.
Right. I'm thinking to that joke in the trailer where there's that woman in the audience that's like, what about the opioid crisis, right? Or something like that. It's like, yeah. I thought that was a great joke, but right. I think that kind of encapsulates that point quite well within like kind of a comedy setting. So these next questions are for Jana, because you're both actor and a writer on the show. How do you effectively manage both roles as a multi-hyphenate?
I managed it with the help of all of these wonderful people. I mean, can't imagine, Bobby, it's true. Could not have done it alone. I couldn't have had this job without Sierra. I really, I had samples and I peddled them all over town and I tried to get into every single festival and I didn't get into any. And my stories that I was trying to tell were not being recognized. So getting staffed and having a Native woman be the person who pulled me up was like a very important part of my journey. And I would also say that, because of COVID-19, we had hurdles in the process of creating the show, but Sierra was really there the entire time. And I feel like her and my collaboration has gotten closer over the course of the process, and being on stage, like being a performer and transitioning to being a performer from being a writer, like it was so helpful to have her guidance and her wisdom about how that works, because she's written on so many shows. So she has really been my champion. And then of course I am working with Ed Helms and Michael Greyeyes, who are two people who, I mean, they're iconic, like in both my comedy brain and my like native media brain. I'm working with like two of the people that I've always watched on TV and been just absolutely like in complete admiration of, and they're also amazing teachers. I mean, Michael is legitimately an actual professor, but they're also, in terms of like my performing, and Ed was in the writing room with us, so like he was very helpful to me, and teaching me kind of how to like do the thing, how to be in scenes. And he gave me permission to riff with him and to improvise with him, and he helped me make my bits funnier, and it created space for me in the same way that Michael and I got to be like excited about this process with each other in a way that I didn't expect would happen. And so it really felt like a team effort. Everything that I've done on this show has felt very much like I've had a family behind me. And I don't know, I feel kind of spoiled. I don't know if I can do it any other way after this. If I get a job after this.
Jana's also being very humble. Like, she is a star. Like, she took the ball and ran with it, and we gave her guidance and support, but she really, I mean, just showed up and wowed everybody. And many members of the crew had no idea this was her first job. Like, she really just attacked this role and just ran with it. So
100%.
Amazing. That's just amazing. Congratulations for everything that you have. It's incredible.
Thank you. I mean, again, I couldn't have done it without everyone else, truly.
Michael, so you're, as Jana said, a superstar. I found out you were coming. I was like, oh man, Michael's gonna be here. It's great. As far as I understand, this is your first comedy.
Yes, it is. It is. I mean, I've been funny previously.
Right.
No, except the people who know me. And also I'm like scary when you meet me, apparently. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because, like, when I first started my career, I couldn't book things, and an actor in Canada was like, don't worry, man, as you get older, things will just settle, and then they won't think you're too nice. Because that was like one of the things that I used to get all the time. It's like, you just didn't have an edge. They were looking for something. You just seemed too nice. You were too friendly. I was like, okay, well, I could show you something else. And then all of a sudden I started working more, which was so bizarre. So then I end up, like with this, I think, a really great career, really interesting roles, but they're pretty serious. So when I came to Rutherford Falls, you know, my teeth were chattering. You know, I was so nervous. I'm rolling with stand-up comics and heavyweights, you know, champions. And so I was like, I hope I can hang with these people. And first week, it was like I was on like the, you know, Texas Motor Speedway. They were like flying. Like day one, I was like, oh, okay. So I had to, you know, I just had to keep up because that's what's so incredible about the show, that the writing starts like here, you know, like there's all history. We're here, and like we're gonna go into the next frame in the next second. Are you with us? So I just had to keep up. But I was coached, and the writing's so dynamite that, you know, I kind of just said the words. It turned out okay.
That's good.
Michael, I really want you to tell the story that you told earlier about Mahershala's his idea. I think that's like it was.
Yeah.
I'll let you tell it, but it's just fascinating.
Yeah, you know, like, okay, so I work with Mahershala on True Detective, and I'm a big fan of his. And he said something in an interview that just blew my mind completely. He said, you know, it's really interesting as an actor of color, as a black actor. He said, I get asked a lot about a representation, the show, you know, the black characters in the show. What, you know, how is this adding to, you know, cinema, etc. And he said, then, you know, that's like 50% of the interview. And then the next half is them asking me about my performance and my craft. And he said, but this happens to all, you know, BIPOC actors. Our identity is front and center. And he said, just like, for example, like Ethan Hawke doesn't get asked about his identity.
Right.
So the entire interview, it talks about his craft and about the choices he made in the performance, etc. So it sort of furthers a narrative in people's minds that Ethan Hawke is excellent, and he's great. He's absolutely great. But in the interview, we never talk about like, well, what did you think about the white characters in the show? Right? Because nobody cares, right? They just are.
Right.
And I remember just that point of view, Mahershala's point of view was so, and he said, one day they're just going to ask me about my work, about the craft. And he said that'll be a great day.
That's fantastic. Wow. Let's sit with that for a second.
Yeah, these are the kind of incredible gems you get working with Michael Greyeyes
Right.
on screen. We're like having these intellectual conversations about being natives and in the performing arts and like what it means.
Yeah.
And it's just truly
Right.
wonderful.
Right.
And I'm very good at quoting really smart people. Like Marcus Lally.
That's how you get to be a professor, right?
That's correct. That is correct, Bobby. I'm still expecting your paper. I gave you an extension. Next week, or there's no points. No points.
I would watch that show, by the way. I would watch Professor Greyeyes. I would watch that.
36-year-old Bobby Wilson didn't
Go
actually
back to
graduate high
school.
school.
Cool.
I mean, that's so. I mean, I came up with a slew of new questions based off of what you just said, Professor Greyeyes. So I mean, just if you all could humor me for a second, like let's talk about craft for a hot second, right? Like I guess like from the writer perspective, right? Like you're faced with this kind of seemingly insurmountable task that's like has a lot of history behind it, right? Like we're talking about Native people on screen. Right, and there's over 100 years of that already. That's not so tasteful, right? So how do you use like what you know or what your expertise is to kind of undo all of that, right? Like piece by piece. Like what are the things that like you're really looking at there, and how do you communicate that?
Well, the thing that's key for me, and the thing that's in the writing, is like who we are. That's the essential matter. or like the fuel rods, for performance. So yes, you can acknowledge historical performance. You can acknowledge other eras of work. But what's not present and has never been present in our media representations is the intricacies of how we relate to each other. Because often we're isolated or we're placed as foils to something else. But like there's one scene, it's one of my favorites of the 4 episodes I've seen so far, is with Gyawan Dio, this incredible Mohawk actress, and myself. And I'm trying to get her as her dad to try and like get her like to get excited about this idea that I'm excited about. And after I watched it, she was like, first of all, I was just so blown away by her, like how incredible she was. But then I said, Native men and their teenage daughters are never the subject of a scene show. Like,
right.
I was like, yet we not only did we see this beautiful scene, but one with such complexity and sophistication. And so, but that's just one scene in an episode of like 200 scenes just like it. So what they're doing is paradigm shifting a place where we were marginalized inside stories to where we're like in the middle of the story, in the middle of the frame. And it's mind-boggling when I kind of realize what we've been doing. We're deprogramming, nearly 100 years of television.
Everything, right? Everything. And it's funny. That's the best part about it, I think. I feel like people are really gonna enjoy it. So I am running a little low on time, so I'm gonna get to my final questions before I open it up to Q&A for everybody. And I do have to address the elephant in the room because this show was made in a global pandemic. What was that experience like? How did you effectively manage it? Students at USC, everything is virtual, so we've all had to do a bunch of virtual production ourselves. So we'd really appreciate some advice on how you effectively manage a production in a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really hard question to answer. Yeah. I think obviously like we were all dealing with it. Like I have a cousin, my sister cousin who, is a nurse. So, I mean, she was having a way harder time than any of us. So I feel like you always come with a level of privilege in terms of like, we were still very lucky to make a TV show. We are, had a big budget. We were, very lucky, but I think we tried to set a tone of, which was so hard because the show was so important to me, but also it's just a TV show. So like people's safety was just paramount over everything else. It was, in productions, as I'm sure you guys all know, there's this idea of like playing hurt, like, oh, if I have a cough and it's fine, I'll just keep working. And what we tried to really do is make clear to everyone on the staff, if you feel sick, stay home, that the actual like way you can be a great team player is to not come in and really kind of retraining people to have that instinct. We had incredible testing protocols. We had, but we ended up, I remember we were shut down like after our first production meeting. So we're like about to go in production and everything, the whole world shuts down. And then we ended up having to rewrite based on COVID protocols. So there are all these things that we weren't able to do. So, but we had to kind of compromise because there were certain things we really wanted to do. So it was, but I found I've come up in network television, and network television is like 21 minutes. You can have maybe one, you can say but 4 times a year. It's like literally like the most insane rules, and you're trying to like trade for this, for that, and it's just bananas. And so I was like, oh, I'm so glad to go on streaming where it can be as long as we want it, or if we want this. And then it immediately became like network TV where they're like, shorten these scripts, like da-da-da-da-da. But I think like, my mom is a Navajo tapestry weaver, and like Two Gray Hills patterns have a very specific rules you have to follow of like color palettes and geometric shapes and symmetry. But within those rules, there's like an infinite palette and like infinite designs you can come up with. And so I think personally, comedy is made better like under duress. Like when you have sort of and if you watch a lot of streaming shows, like those comedies get real long and you're like, did you really need these extra 3 minutes, you know? And so I think we kept it tight, we kept it really, and I do think it really actually made us like hone what we were doing, the stories we wanted to tell, the stuff we wanted to do. I think there were some compromises that unfortunately did get made later in the season as the numbers started to go up, and that was really hard. There was some elder actors that I ended up disinviting, and they were like, what did I do? I was like, nothing, you did nothing wrong. But I said, you know, the numbers are up and I don't want to put people in danger. And so so there were definitely decisions that I just made across the board in terms of like, this is so important to me as an artistic project, but I've worked on certain TV shows, you can't even find them on Hulu, like they're gone, you know? So it's also trying to keep both of those things, I think, in our hearts and in our minds at the same time.
Wow. Comedy works best under duress. Like that's such a really interesting thing to say. Could some of the writers comment on that maybe?
Honestly, this is my first staff writing job, so I was basically scared since day one. I was like, just show up, be correct, smile, we're doing great. But no, it was, I do feel, I will say prior to COVID, very, very fortunate that we had those 10 weeks together, because it was like a great space to really get to know each other and get to a space where we're comfortable telling each other stories and jokes. So I feel like it made the Zoom room that we had after even better.
Definitely.
I had a professor in college who was a comedy and culture class I took, and her whole thing with us was like, comedy comes from tragedy. So we would talk in class about like these tragic things that happen. She'd be like, your assignment is to go home and write like a short story, but make it funny. And so we talk about like, you know, comedy under, did you say duress or distress?
Duress.
I don't even know if that's the right word, to be honest with you.
But I also think that, which is also why I think we're so funny, and I'm happy we're finally able to show that we're funny, because it's been a tragic history. But
right.
There's no one funnier to be telling our story than us. And so just to piggyback on what Sierra said, I think like, yes, the circumstances are part of it, but also like the root of comedy really does come from tragedy.
Right.
Yeah,
Bobby,
I think, since we had, it really was sort of magical in the way that it all kind of came together. And I fucking hate to, like, that sounds really rude when I say it out loud, because I mean, it was a global pandemic and like the world was on fire, is on fire. But like we all met in January and wrote until March. And it felt like we all sort of experienced this together. And when we were able to continue working via Zoom, I mean, the first week it was like, that's all we could talk about. It was like, holy shit, this is crazy. Right now we're all in little squares. Yeah. But to Sierra's point, it did make the comedy that we were doing, I think, a bit funnier, but also cleaner and tighter, as we were like screen sharing and editing together. Like, I mean, the editing process was really phenomenal. I felt like it was like a team sport, you know, like, are we going to get this line up? Here we go. Let's do it, guys. We can salvage this joke, and we can even make it better. Yeah, really great.
I think that editing process and having to go on Zoom and we were having scripts in front of us on this screen improved my writing faster than anything has ever. Like, it made me a significantly better writer seeing the editing process happen like in real time. Oh my God, hi.
I know. Oh.
Say hi, everybody. It's bedtime.
It's
pretty
bedtime.
much bedtime.
Night.
You hear night?
All right. So one last question for me, then we'll open it up. Where does the future of Native Americans in comedy and in television go from here? Is the future bright, in your opinion?
I think more. Bobby disagrees, but we've had this argument many times. No, I think,
Is it-
I was on a show called Happy Endings a majillion years ago, and there was like a writer's room of like 20 of us. And I think like 18 of us have become showrunners from that room.
Wow.
And I it was a lot of first time writers and really seasoned people, upper levels. And I was like, if I ever get a show, this is what I want to do. And we ended up hiring a lot of first time writers, and then or people who'd been in like maybe one other room, and then a lot of seasoned writers. It was like a teaching hospital, and except we don't save lives or do anything important, but I feel like every one of these four people could be showrunners, like for sure. And like not even a doubt in my mind. And Happy Endings, my first job, my boss, that was my first job in TV, and that was his first job in TV. He just sold a show and got a show. So that is the weird thing about this business, is you can just kind of like overnight be someone's boss. And so I really took it as like this opportunity to kind of say like, oh, I remember how I felt as a staff writer. How do I, create a room that feels organically welcoming? And
Wow.
yeah, so I think, and it's just going to keep, sounds like a pyramid scheme, but it's just going to keep permeating in terms of like lifting people up and bringing people up and giving people their first jobs, because I think it's so important. And there's so many people, like there's just so many, we met with so many Native writers, and even if they weren't right for the show, I get calls all the time being like, do you have anyone? I'm like, this woman should be on a CW show, or like, oh, this person's hilarious in this way. So it's just a real misnomer that we found in terms of the actors and of the writers, that like, oh, they're not out there. Like they're out there. Like we had so many people for every role that it was like, even though we did cast a lot of the writers, we were like, oh, that person can play Terry's wife, or this person can play, this person. And, or we knew we could just write a one line, funny line part, because we knew we had people we could pull from. And so, yeah, I just think it's a really, really exciting time for so many of us. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I see also that as Indigenous people, we have lots of stories.
Right.
So I actually look at a lot of the films being made, up here in Canada and elsewhere. Like Wild Indian was a crime thriller. Again, a genre film.
Right.
Blood Quantum, Rhymes for Young Ghouls. Like these are horror films. Like Indigenous futurism, comedy. Like we are literally taking it back, like everywhere. Rom-coms, that's our next target.
I want that. I want to do that. No, I completely agree. And I think it's every time we get interviewed a lot right now, and they'll say like, oh, this like, the Native perspective. And I'm like, it's a Native perspective. This is a Native perspective, because there's so many that are coming, and that have been here that you haven't gotten a chance to see. And so I just think it's like, just making sure people always know that this is just one of many.
Right. I mean, there are 7 people on this screen that come from 7 different Native backgrounds. Like, let's talk about that for a second, right? That's fantastic. Thank you all so much for taking the time to chat with me. So I'll go through and ask a couple audience questions right now. Our first comes from Scott Andrews. What were some of the Native jokes that you did not keep in, either because they went too far or because the non-Native audience would not get it?
Yeah, we didn't really care about that. There was there's like, I remember there was a joke about Johnny Depp that I was like, I wonder if anyone will get this. But like, I've been in so many comedy rooms where so many like white dude comedy guys they call them 1%ers. Well, like only 1% of the people are going to get that. And they'd be like, I don't know, I think it's funny, I want to put it in. And so there's like multiple jokes where I remember being like, I don't know if everyone will get this, but like my mom will laugh at this and my aunties will laugh at this. And like, we're doing this for the aunties. So like, yeah, I mean, I think
Hashtag do it for the aunties, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure stuff did get cut for time, or there's definitely like certain scenes that got cut due to production and stuff. But I don't know, maybe you guys have a different perspective, because I feel like as like the like non-showrunner writers, you always remember your jokes that got cut. Like I still remember jokes from 2011 that got cut. So
Tazbah still won't let me forget about the Johnny Depp one.
Oh, I want to hear.
What happened?
I want to hear this one.
Wait, because
I was supposed to be in that episode, and then
Oh yeah, well that was a problem. But we gave it to Jana. Jana did it.
Bobby chose. He was like, Sierra, I don't want to be in the episode of Tazba around. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. I said Johnny Depp's been through enough.
Yeah, there's a Johnny Depp joke. Didn't make it.
And then I think there were jokes like we made a Mark Ruffalo joke that was like, once we said it, people got it. You know what I mean? Where it's like people follow the breadcrumbs and figure it out. Like I didn't understand all the jokes in Master of None, but like I got it. You know, like
Yeah. There was a syphilis joke that didn't make it, but that's because
yes, there was a syphilis joke that didn't make it. I don't remember why.
I remember it because it was my joke.
You wrote that joke about, you know, Native people still hold a grudge. We still bring up Columbus. I remember you just came out with that. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, we have to do that. I'm terrified of saying that on screen, and it was so funny. And it was between two Native characters. So it wasn't, you know, but yeah.
Tazbah, that was a great line. Oh my God.
Thanks. I can take credit for
it. All right. Our next question comes from Sydney Erickson. Did any of you start writing or acting outside of Los Angeles in another location? And did you find it more difficult to find opportunities in non-LA areas to tell and portray Native American stories?
Yeah, I started in New York. Like I'm in a blank room right now because I just moved to LA 40 minutes ago. Like I truly started in it. I've granted it was another big city, but it was all about just like for me creating a community within this community that I was in, meeting more Native performers, more queer performers, and now I'm part of the Gay Native Illuminati, and it's like it is what it is.
You have the most power of anyone on the Zoom right now, guys.
I'm actually 36 floors underground.
I feel like 1491's kind of changed the game, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember there was like kind of pre and post that happening of there was just a way to see Native comedy in a way that you hadn't before, and then them just traveling across the country. I remember just watching these in like, I don't know where I was when you guys started, and I was like, this is amazing. Like it was really inspirational to know that you could just kind of grab your phone and your friends and start making stuff. And I feel like a lot of people have started to do that. Like I hired Bobby off of Instagram just because I knew him a little bit, but we were like looking and reading writers, and I kept laughing at my phone, and my husband was like, what are you laughing at? I'm like, Bobby posted this thing. And he goes, why don't you be with Bobby? And I was like, he does make me laugh more than like most people. And then Ty and Jana, we found from a UCB show that they had come from to do the Native UCB show. And then in Tazba was a recommendation from someone I really, really trusted. And it was just, I think like we met with a bunch of people from the Skins Fest labs. We met with a bunch of people from like the Sundance Institute and stuff. So I think like the more you can kind of just make stuff and put it in front of people, I think it really helps, because when it came time to be like, do we pick this person or this person? Jana had done these like incredible short films, like Tazba had done short films, like everyone had made stuff that it was really easy to kind of show people and be like, they're, you know, they might be missing a couple of things, but they also have this stuff.
Right. Definitely don't want to undersell that point about before and after 1491s for sure. I remember being in middle school, like scrolling through YouTube and watching them just all day, and it was like the greatest thing in the world.
100 years old.
Me too, middle school.
Yeah, totally. I think I was like in home. That's where I definitely was watching that.
When we were doing that.
Great. It was really great. Changed my life. All right. Our next question comes from Bree Sky. Does anyone on the panel have advice for new Native writers who are hoping to connect with the Native TV writing community?
If you got other Indians that read and write, just like, you know, get together and feel all right.
I think a lot of stuff I think like a lot of people are told like find like a mentor that's like really high up. But most of the jobs I got when I was first starting out were people who were at the same level that I was, that were just starting out. And I think the more you can build sort of community with the people closest to you, instead of trying to like shoot for this one mentor that's going to get you what you need, like the more you can kind of create your own sort of collectives and support each other, I find has benefited me way more as a writer.
Yeah, I was new to the, oh, sorry, Tazbah, you want to go? I when I moved to Los Angeles, I was really looking to connect with other Native writers, and there was a group of Native women in the WGA who kind of like brought me into the fold and helped me understand like what the landscape looked like in terms of like screenwriting specifically. But I also think that it's like creating content should be collaborative, and that, you know, when you're creating whatever you're doing is as part of your hustle, if you can like bring people into that work, that creative work, then that is the community building. And I was told a lot when I first moved here, like you need to like network, you got to network with people. And I just like had this idea that it was like schmoozing with people or like rubbing elbows with people that I didn't get along with, and that was very unattractive to me. But when it came down to it, what that actually looked like was just making friends and being friends with people and being in community with people. And I think that if we can like change the idea of what it means to network and actually just be together and like working together on our own like little indie projects, like that is a great way to just build teams.
Yeah, I would agree with Jana that I think like there's two things. One is what Jana said about being in good relationship with people and building genuine friendships, because a lot of times that's where you do get your work. It's recommendation, but not recommendation from like, oh, you got to know, like I kind of had that thing of like, oh, it's all about who you know, but like now I understand what that means, which is just about having relationship with people and being an authentic person and being a good person, and like don't be shitty to people, like be genuine, because what will happen is like, you know, at this place, someone might come to us and say, oh, we're like staffing this show or we're looking for this. And maybe you can't do it, but you have this other person and you're like, you know what, this person would be perfect. And your word at that time means something. And a showrunner might take that word, you know, for example, like Sierra, me being on this show, you know, she got a recommendation of someone she trusts about me. And that connection came together really authentically, but it was because of good relationship between her and that person and good relationship between me and that person. But you also have to have the work, you know, to back that up at the same time. So the second thing I'll mention is, you know, if you are, you know, coming to LA and you're wanting to connect, the WGA does have a Native American Indigenous Writers Committee, and we open our meetings up to kind of, you know, up and coming writers. We also have a list that we keep called the pre-WGA list, that if you're not part of the WGA yet, but you're wanting to be a writer and you have samples, we just keep an eye on you and we just track like the first time you're staff, we want to know so we can get you on our committee, or we can get you an opportunity being a writer's assistant. So like there's those two things. That's
great. One of the adages in writers' rooms is like, do I want to be in a room with this person for 10 hours? Because like, that was like when I first came up, because sometimes you're staying all night, you know, like you spend more time with those people sometimes than your own families. And so the more you can kind of create community, the more people will think of you as someone that they want to be around for 10 hours a day, you know?
Wonderful. All right. Our next question comes from Andrina Smith. So often Native stories are rooted in trauma. Being free from that weight, what were some of the fun, surprising, or enjoyable moments of the Native perspective you got to share on screen?
I think that like the fourth episode is about Terry and his family. And I think like we all got invested in this family where it was like the idealized version of the family that we all kind of wanted. I don't know if I'm oversharing in that way or if I'm being inaccurate, but I think like one of the things Michael would talk about a lot and that we kind of discussed as a room was like Native joy and Native excellence, that you know, in my people, during the long walk is when some of the most beautiful Navajo tapestries were woven, that from that trauma you still had, and you know, they were making those rugs when like Van Gogh was painting, and they didn't sign their work, so we don't know who made them. And so it was very important to us to not shy away from trauma, or not shy away, but I feel like so much in our lives, it's all entrenched and it's all happening while we're feeling joy, while we're feeling these sort of family connections and these needs to protect the ones we care about. And so getting to see Terry's family and kind of really understand why he does what he does. I think on most shows, he would sort of be written off as this sort of flattened character that gets you to the like last 3 episodes of this arc on some, you know, and it was really important to us to really see him as a person who had wants and needs and history, but not just history with a capital H, but like personal history. Because I feel like that's something you never ever get to see. So yeah, I think that would be my answer.
I want to say even outside of, oh, you go.
Just from a performance angle, and I said this to Jana, like, because I was so surprising. With this shift away from previous ways of working, which often included tragic stories or trauma, was the speed at which we were working. You know, if in my previous experience, if you said something truthfully, and within the genre, slow was fine. In fact, it was preferred, but not on Rutherford Falls. Rutherford Falls, they were like, loved that, loved what you did, keep all of it and make it go faster. So I was like, wait a second, I've been working in Hollywood for 30 years. I have never been asked to say something faster, which is like also mind-blowing when you think about, like, do they think we speak slow?
Right.
You know, right? Blew my mind. And every time I was like, that was pretty fast. And they'd go, it's great, faster.
Piece it
So,
up.
like, just from a performance perspective, that just, I'm still reeling from being asked to say my lines faster. Like, it's so cool. So cool. Go, Ty.
I just wanted to say some of the fun things on the writer's room side was just like, there'd be moments where it'd be like, you all had this lamp, right? And everyone would be like, that's the lamp I had in my house. Like, there's like all these like weird native connections that we were able to enjoy and really showcase. That's gonna be part of the show. And it was those little moments like that in the room that I thoroughly, like, truly enjoyed.
When everyone went back home during the pandemic, everyone took a photo of the same lamp and like sent it to the group chat.
I remember having conversations too, be like, what's your cradle board look like? And I'd be like, well, here's 3 my parents have. Like, what are we referencing here?
All right, moving on to our next question, which comes from Grace Dove. How can we support the show and encourage other networks to follow this amazing example of proper Indigenous representation?
Well, please watch. We premiere Thursday, April 22nd on Peacock. There's a free weekend. So there's a free like 7-day trial, but so much of it is like the algorithm. Like I worked in network TV where you're always waiting for like the Nielsen ratings from like the 1950s, but now it's like with streaming, it's very much, you know, new subscribers. Did you watch? How fast did you binge? Like they know if you watch 2 and walk away and then come back. So much of it is about the rate at which you watch, and if you subscribed, and if you were interested in the show, and if you tweet about it or talk about it, or you know, everything really actually does kind of help. There's so much TV now to kind of make your mark is very difficult. So that's in terms of supporting the show. In terms of supporting, I think it's making, you know, asking questions. I have a writer friend who got offered to work on a show with Native content, and they were like, how many Native writers do you have on your staff? Are they upper level writers? Like, can you please explain to me this thing before I even like meet on the show? And so I was like really touched by that, because I think that's something that rarely gets asked with Native projects. I think definitely less so than, but I think more so now, because I think that stuff really matters. And I think people were realizing it makes for a better show. It's not altruism. It's not like checking off a box. Like it makes for better, more entertaining TV.
Great. All right, moving on to our next question. It comes from Leah Gonzalez. What are some challenges, rewards that Sierra experienced being in the showrunner seat? How did you navigate hiring a group of writers, and what did you look for when you were hiring? You talked about this a little bit.
Yeah, I wrote down everyone's level and like a description of them, and then on a 3x5 card, and like lower level writers were like yellow, mid level writers were green, and then like upper level writers were blue. And I had this like weird. Mike Schur called me Amy Santiago from Brooklyn Nine-Nine because I had my binders. I was like moving. I was like trying to like draft a baseball team, but on all of the cards I wrote a joy to be around. Like everyone, when they came in, were just for different reasons. And not everyone was like Pollyanna and positive, but like they were genuinely just a joy to be around in their own kind of way. And so I was like, yeah, I want a room full of people who are a joy to be around. And that was sort of, which I know is like this kind of weird thing to hit. But yeah, I think it's a feeling, and there's like a weird alchemy to it. And we just met with everybody. We met with so many writers. But yeah, in terms of like, what was the first part of the question? Was how do you?
What were some of the challenges or rewards you've experienced as a showrunner?
I mean, just ultimate rewards. I really can't even. My cup runneth over. Like this has just been such a dream opportunity, and to sort of get to do this job with these people, with these actors, was just the dream. It really was. I think there were certain compromises we made due to the COVID protocols and stuff, but I'm just so proud of what we've made.
Amazing. All right. And another question comes from JD Connor. You said Apple took it and then passed. Could you say more about that, especially because it seems like it would make sense near Ted Lasso, for example?
Well, that's the theory. You wonder, you're going to make a lasso. Are you going to make one of these? We really don't know. I think, Apple was just like brand spanking new network. And I think that they were figuring out what the tone of the stuff they wanted to make was. And I think we were also figuring out what the show was. And so sometimes it's like a breakup. It's just like ships in the night. You're like, they seemed great. Like, I'm great. We just didn't work out. Mm. But I'm so happy to be at Peacock. Like, I really do feel like they were so open to the stuff we wanted to do and the way we wanted to tell the story. So no regrets.
And were you able to recruit natives from other parts, like in behind the camera capacities as well, outside of writing and acting?
So yeah, so we did co-composer is the Hallucination. So Tim and Bear, formerly Tribe Called Red, were our co-composers, and their music is incredible. And they're incredible composers who, like, I remember like the first song for Jana, we were like, she's like the anti-supreme, and like Terry is like the uncle. These are like these two forces that, are constantly kind of battling, but also complementing each other. And they got it. They're like, we were making these uncle tracks for Terry, and it's going to be great. And like, it just was like such a big part of the world of the show. We also had Sydney Freeland, who is a Navajo director, and she directed 4 of the 6 episodes. So there's definitely more to be done. And I think, again, with COVID, it was much harder to kind of do as much as we wanted to do. But we had a lot. I mean, there were multiple times where there was like native director, native writer, native actors on set talking, or it would be like me in the mix with a composer. Like, so it was a very rare that I was the only native person, in a lot of these spaces, for sure.
That's amazing. I've never heard of such a thing before. Like, that's really quite incredible to hear. I think this might be our last question, considering the time right now. It comes from David McKay. How did you choose your directors? Was it entirely your choice as the showrunner, or did the network weigh in heavily?
Well, that changed heavily due to COVID. So we had Lauren Schur, who is an incredible director. He is more known as a DP. He DP'd all of the Hangover movies. He was nominated for Joker, Garden State. He's done like a lot of really amazing, like visually interesting movies. And so he was supposed to just do the pilot, and then once everything got crazy with COVID, we block shot a lot of stuff. So he ended up doing 3. We wanted Sydney and Sterling to do multiple episodes, and then Sterling doing TV show. So we ended up having Sydney do 4 instead of 2 and 2. And then there's some really great, like Rebecca Asher, Claire Scanlon, who are just tried and true TV directors towards the end of the season. And then I'm trying to think who else. I think that's it, right? I think. So yeah, but it was very important for us to have a lot of women and to have like native director for sure. But hopefully there'll be more if we get a season 2.
Guaranteed. All right, and it looks like there's one last one. What hashtag should natives use to promote the show?
Ooh, I wish Bobby was here.
Right.
I have 3 hashtags that Rutherford Falls, of course.
Yeah.
I've been trying to champion hashtag Uncle Mike for Michael Greyeyes. It's not quite catching on, but like I think if we just work
Okay,
as
let
a
it go.
community, like we know how to
Let it go.
do. And the other one I've been like spouting, part of the cast and the crew, we started a pizza club, which is just ordering pizza and then putting hashtag Rutherford Falls Pizza Club on Instagram. So if you go on eat pizza on the 22nd and order a pizza and post hashtag Rutherford Falls Pizza Club, I hope that there will be at least 5 people doing it.
I'll try to be one of them.
Yes, do it.
Let's go. All right, everyone. I think that's all we have time for now. Thank you all so much for coming. Alex, do you have any final words for everyone?
Just to thank you guys for an amazing evening. I really cannot wait to see this show. I'm very jealous that you've already gotten a preview of it, Kapena.
Yeah. You should be. It's great.
Thank you all so much for coming. Ian, if you're still there, do you want to jump in and say any final words about this?
No, not at all. I just want to say thank you to everyone again. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And you guys are really busy and you have a big schedule. And so really, thank you so much for just being here and spending time with the students and our community and everyone interested. So can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks
Thank you.
so much, guys.
Thank you.
All
Good night, everybody.
right, have a good evening.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.